I wanted to hate him. I really wanted to hate him because he, just the way the media and the press would build him up. And your 90 caps for England or your 90 caps for South Africa aren't worth any more than my 90 for Australia. I feel like the biggest wanker ever just talking myself.
What was it like dealing with that level of disappointment?
He didn't see me in his team. I was like, okay, why did you fly me up to tell me that? You know, you're thinking tomorrow night, shit, I might be a world champion. It's everything I've ever wanted.
If you could give one piece of advice to anyone listening that wanted to do something abnormal in their lives, what would that piece of advice be? Welcome to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. My guest today has represented his country 103 times, been part of 2 World Cup Finals, won multiple European and domestic titles throughout his rugby career, and is now one of the stars of the infamous KOKO Podcast. Matt Giteau, welcome to Abnormal.
Thank you, Pete. Good to be here. Excited.
Hey, loving the merch in the background.
Yeah, mate, every chance I got, if we do something, the boys make sure, if it's not branded, there's always a fine if we catch someone else doing something where, this is my little studio that I record if I don't drive up to Sydney with the boys, just down in the garage, so I just leave it up. Can't get fined.
Any chance for some publicity, yeah, you can't avoid those fines. Mate, the last time I saw you, I did catch up with you briefly at the new Kai Tak Stadium in Hong Kong on the Sunday it was. How's the recovery been?
No, it's slow. That week after, it's like it almost, your body knows what you've got to get to, like the effort you've got to take to be at your peak for that Hong Kong, because we did the 10s and the 7s. But then on that flight home, it's almost like my body knew just give up. So yeah, it was a slow week after that, but I feel good now. So we've been, 3 weeks since Hong Kong, coming up to 3 weeks. And me and my wife, we've both been off the drink now for that period there, and I feel good.
It's amazing what a few weeks off the sauce can do, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But it's also even just the mental challenge, because there's always a reason to drink or celebrate. So there's never a good time to take a break. So we've chosen this because the first 2 weeks is easy, but this next 2 weeks is hard because you've got Easter, and then in Australia we've got Anzac Day, which is huge.
And are you good at saying no to these sort of occasions? Me myself, I'm pretty terrible if I'm surrounded by like the boys and that I'm, rubber arm. I can easily get twisted. What are you like at that?
I can fall into that trap as well, but I think if I make it public or vocalise that I'm off the drink for a month, then it keeps me accountable. And if I don't do what I said I was going to do, I feel like I've let myself down. So I'm generally pretty good. If I let people know that I'm going to do it, then I'm pretty solid.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, back to the Hong Kong Sevens quickly. I know you started your career in Sevens for Australia. Did you ever get to play in Hong Kong?
I did. I think Hong Kong could have been one of my first tournaments, actually. We did Argentina first. And then the second tournament was Hong Kong, then Singapore, which I think they still do now. But yeah, I remember first time when I played in Hong Kong, Serevi was at his peak. He was holding the ball one hand. It was like even the New Zealand Sevens team, a lot of them went on to play for the All Blacks. Wakatoko, Chris Marsoe, Tuatavaki was in there. I think Reni IE was at his peak. He was playing then as well. So yeah, it was a good tournament for us. We were knocked out early, so I could actually watch these geniuses go to work in the finals. But back then, Sevens was a pathway almost for, if you're showing some type of talent and you're in an academy program, they'll then pick you in the Sevens to see how you fare against other internationals or how you go travelling. If you do well, then you'll get picked into a Super Rugby team. Then from Super Rugby team, you play well enough, it's a normal progression into Wallabies. So, yeah, it used to be a pathway program, whereas now since an Olympic sport, they're 2 totally different sports. Like, it's still rugby union, but the games are totally different.
You've given me the perfect segue there for the start of your career. I want to just give a bit of background to the listeners because it's not a rugby podcast. It's a podcast where, we talk to people who have done abnormal things, entrepreneurs, content creators, athletes, whoever. So what's one thing that the listeners should know about you, maybe other than just the rugby side, that would give them the best context for this conversation moving forward?
What they should know about me, this is tough. This is why transitioning out of rugby has been hard. Not hard, but like still trying to find the right avenue to go to, because I hate talking about myself. And I feel like everyone at the moment sells themselves a lot to get that next step, which is what's required. But I just don't know. I find that tough. So something about myself. I don't know. I'm a family man. I'm very quiet. I live just like hanging around family, close friends. My circle's pretty tight. As far as anything outside of rugby, I started like a rugby podcast with a couple of mates of mine for a bit of fun. And that's it. Like rugby has been my life. So since I left university, didn't finish my degree, I went into the Wallabies quite quickly, and then thought I'd only play for 10 years like a normal career. Ended up retiring last year at 42. So I haven't really done anything other than rugby professionally. So from a professional point of view, the listeners, I feel I'm not qualified. I'm abnormal in a sense that I'm not your normal person, a bit strange. I've got some strange quirks, but I'm certainly not, like people doing those abnormal things. I feel like I'm underqualified for this podcast, really.
Don't be silly. What I want to talk about further down in this conversation is again, I could really nerd out about the whole rugby side, and I've had to be careful preparing for this one with my wife, who to be like, right, I don't just want to make it into a rugby thing, because that I could talk about for hours. I do want to talk about some stages in your career and how you dealt with them, and sort of the mental bits behind it. But you did mention there initially the transition that you've gone through in the past few years to now no longer a professional rugby player. And it happened, how old were you when you retired, if you don't mind me asking?
42. Well, originally, so I retired, I could have been 40 maybe, after LA when we got kicked out. So we had a team in the MLR, the American League, and we got kicked out the week of the semi-finals, and there was no longer a team. They were removed. So I kind of came back home and retired. Had a year for that 2023 World Cup, did some ambassador stuff with a beautiful French bank that your wife was involved with for a little while, and then she moved on very selfishly, left me in the dark. But yeah, so then I just had a year off just doing that, going over to France, enjoying being back around rugby but not playing. And then I got a call for kind of a half-season stint in San Diego, the chance to play with Ma'anonu again. So I went back last year and then re-retired. Didn't make it public because I don't think you can do that twice. I feel like you should just do that once. So officially, I retired when I was 42 last year.
So yeah, as you said, it's a long old career. And that, like, that transition piece that you're doing now, how have you found it? Like, what no one really talks about it is what I was very lucky. My transition happened at a very young age, and it wasn't really a transition like yours. My kind of identity, I would say, was never a professional rugby player, because I never really made it. I made it to a contract, but I never played like in the first team or international or anything. So I would say for people like me, and there are thousands of people like me, that transition is actually probably a lot easier, because you're never experiencing those incredible highs and that lifestyle over a consistent period of time. So for yourself, who's at the opposite end of that spectrum, what has that been like to completely change what you've been doing for the last 18 odd years?
I wouldn't say it's been overly challenging. I know like a lot of ex-teammates that I've been with, they transitioned, they obviously had to transition through that, and it was a lot tougher for them. For me, the hardest part, honestly, at the moment is school pickups. When you go to pick the kids up from school and you're talking to other parents and they're just trying to be friendly and nice, which is a normal thing, but they're like, what'd you get up to today? And all I did was basically train, because I like to still train because it keeps me accountable, and I feel like I enjoy my day more if I get up and sweat and feel like I've earned the day a little bit, like I've done something already productive. Now I can just do the school drop-off. So you do your lunches, take my wife out to lunch. Every now and then I've got a couple of little side things that I do business-wise, and then the stuff with the podcast. But mainly it's just around those school pickups and the parents saying, how's your day? What'd you get up to? And that, what did you get up to? I kind of feel like like almost a failure a little bit, saying I did nothing. Like I don't need to do anything. Like as far as the kids are concerned, they're still going to get fed and the bills will be paid from that side. But it's just like, I don't know, when you come from achieving certain things and having those goals to then when someone says, what'd you get up to? Something small and insignificant as that, for me, I just like, initially it used to bother me a bit. I just like, well, I did nothing. Like, what's it to you? I wouldn't say that, but in my mind, that's kind of how I would react. Whereas now I've kind of gotten a lot more comfortable with it. I'm still I'm at that stage now where I'm bored of just staying home, like, just hanging around home, if that makes sense. So I'm looking for something, but it still just hasn't come yet. I'm not in a rush to find something. I mean, as an example, there was a mate of ours through rugby that works with prosthetics and putting them, I could just be almost the aid and a surgeon, something where I just handle the prosthetics. I know a bit about surgery, obviously with rugby, you would as well through your own injuries and whatnot. So we kind of pick up knowledge around things without knowing. So I got propositioned to do this for a 6-month gig, and I was seriously thinking about doing it, but I hate blood. I hate the sight of it. I don't like hospitals, but I was just doing it just so that then I could say I'm doing something, not doing it because I actually want to do it and enjoy it. So that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, just to sit back and almost wait for the right opportunity. And then when that comes, I know that it's something that I'll enjoy. And if I enjoy something, like my rugby or my training, I'll generally give 100%.
Yeah, I think, that's a great position to be in. And it's funny how small things can trigger us sometimes, isn't it? So for the podcast then, KOKO, it seems obviously online on social media, it's everywhere. You guys post a lot of content, you get flown out to different things and you do some awesome stuff. Is that not the main thing? Is that just sort of some fun on the side or
Well, definitely,
where do you want to
it's
go
fun
with
on
it?
the side. No, I mean, well, we own it. So, we collectively as a group, even the backroom staff to the talent in front of the camera, we own it all together. So it's kind of our thing. We can do what we want with it. At the moment, it's not like I'll drive up on a Monday, do the record, drive back. So I'm up and back to Sydney. And that's basically the commitment. Obviously, we shoot all our socials. There's different things that happen through the week where we're in constant dialogue. But as far as time consuming, it's not a great deal, except I imagine once the Lions, when it comes up, the end of season tour, there's always something happening. So the idea is obviously just to grow it. But I think the part that we love the most is whenever we watch an episode or you look at socials, it's authentic to who we are. None of it is put on. It's not an act. We just do whatever we do. And we could do, if we wanted, we could do an hour and release our pod this Monday coming. Don't talk any rugby. If we wanted to, because we own it. We don't answer to anyone, which is a nice space to be in. The problem with that is obviously getting sponsorship. So that's kind of been the biggest challenge, just to keep us ticking over, like studio and camera equipment, all that editing. As you know, it's expensive. So it's more just trying to get noticed, get that consistent sponsor that we can then partner up with. And, obviously that's the goal for it to push on. But I think for us, the whole concept was we just wanted to be in a pub, basically it's like we're in a pub, having a few beers, talking about rugby, but we're giving like fly on the wall type stuff. The people that are around, none of it's filtered. We say what we want. We've obviously got editing right. If someone could say something a bit loose once we've had too many beers, so we may cut that, but we try and keep it as authentic as possible.
Yeah, it's I mean I love it. I'm a big fan of it, and it reminds me of like so many people, groups of friends will start a podcast, and they'll be like, "Oh fuck, that was such good chat. We should definitely start a podcast. We're like the funniest guys in the world." And then you guys have done it, and it's actually I think what you've wanted to achieve. Like you've got that fly on the wall effect. You're all ex-pros, and so you get that insight if you're not in that world. But there are so many podcasts out there that would have tried to do the same thing, and like a group of friends get together, tell some funny stories, and it just doesn't end up like what you guys have got.
Well, yeah, I think we're lucky that we've got like our anchor, the guy that runs it, is a comedian. He's been involved in production for so long, 20 years he's had in the business. And he doesn't know anything about rugby, which at the start he thought was actually going to be detrimental to the podcast, but it's been great. Because if, say, we were to have a chat around rugby, we would throw in a couple of terminologies that people don't really understand, but it's very common in our sport. And the professor, who's our anchor, he'll go and say, wait a minute, what did you mean actually about that? And he'll break it down that and ask what he thinks is the dumb questions, but it's probably the questions that everyone wants to ask.
Yeah.
And he's very good at keeping things moving, introducing different segments that we don't read on. Like he'll send out a pre-studio, like what we're going to run through. None of us look at it. None of the players at all. We just watch the games, go in, we'll talk about the footy, and then everything else, we just like to keep it pretty spontaneous and just let it flow.
Yeah, no, you can tell, and he's a great host. Looking forward to seeing where it goes, man. Like I think if you can do more trips like Hong Kong, and then you've got the Lions coming down as well, I'm sure you guys will be very active for that. And I'm sure all the good stuff will come. Have you ever thought, I wanted to ask this one later on down the line, but since we're talking post-rugby, is coaching not something you want to get into? No.
I mean, I've had a few even early big opportunities to coach either in Europe or even in Asia, even in Australia. Even before I went back to LA, I had an opportunity to do some coaching at the Brumbies, be a backs coach there. But I wouldn't do that at the Brumbies purely out of respect because I've never coached. So to come straight in, I'd be doing a massive disservice, I think, to those players if I came in and, just thought that I could just coach them and be able to progress the group on when I feel like coaching's a skill, like anything. Great players don't necessarily make great coaches. And I'm not saying I'm a great player in any sense, but I meant people that could play rugby, not necessarily they can transfer straight into being a good coach as well. So that's kind of one reason why I didn't do it. The second one is I love the sport. Like I really do love the sport. It's given me so much, especially when I was in a bit of a, hang on. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
That's not good, mate. That's a tax man ringing me. So I'm happy to defer that for as long as possible. But also because I love the sport and I feel it's given me so much, I don't want it. It's a fickle game. Like coaching is all about results. When you're winning, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. When you're losing, people are coming for answers or you're going to get sacked. And if I got sacked, especially in a club that I love so much, whether it's the Brumbies or even overseas, I feel it'd give me a bitter taste and a sour taste in my mouth about rugby. And at the moment, I love spectating the sport. I love being involved in it in a very small space with this podcast and being able to go to test matches, interview the players and still stay connected to the game, but without having potentially that sour taste, over the game. So does that make sense? Like why I think that's probably the biggest reason why I don't want to get into coaching because it is so cutthroat.
They get absolutely slammed as well. Like the pressure cooker from being a coach is like, I mean, you would have seen it more than most people, but if you're an international coach, you might have all the best reputation in the world and be a great bloke. And then you come in and don't get the results. And then like, especially the press, the media, they're just unforgiving, unrelenting.
Yeah, that side doesn't bother me too much because as you touched upon, as a player, kind of what you thrived on was each week you're getting judged. And I think that's where a lot of players that I talk to, transitioning, they find that the hardest part, that they go week to week, there's no feedback, they don't know how they're transitioning, like maybe 4 times a year, they may meet with their boss to actually see where they're going for your KPIs or
once a quarter.
Being actually judged. Yeah, but that's just how it is. And they find it really hard. Accountability with your workmates, not being able to call people out the way you can in rugby. So that week-to-week stuff with a coach wouldn't bother me. I feel like that's probably more normal than not getting judged. But yeah, I just think the potential to get sacked and then have a sour taste, and also to be a good coach, as you would know when you're playing, when you turn up as a player, the coach is already there. When you leave, the coaches are still there. So you've got to put in large hours to be a good coach and get the respect of the players. And I just don't want to put the family through that where I'm not home. I'm kind of enjoying being home and doing school drop-offs, helping with homework, just being a dad,
Yeah. Are you a basketball man? Do you follow the NBA?
Love the NBA.
You know, JJ Redick, Lakers coach.
Yes, yep.
I'm just saying that could be you next year. He never coached before. He's never coached
Mate, have you
before. He
seen his
comes in.
interviews? He's got bags under his eyes. He looks
Yeah,
terrible
he's
compared to
he's
when he was
aged a lot
doing
this
his,
season, but
yeah,
wow, he was a very detail-orientated player, very skilled, obviously not
yeah.
athletically gifted, but now as a coach, he's just he's crazy.
Yeah, well, I think he's still quite close to the game that he understands it. Like, I think if you've got the support of someone like LeBron, you're doing something right.
And you know
And
how it started? His podcast with LeBron.
yeah, I know. That was the one that they'd started. And then
So I'm just
JJ
saying,
left.
you've
LeBron's now
retired.
picked it up. No,
You've retired. You've got a podcast. It's not with
listen,
the LeBron James, but hey, you're
mate,
on the same
if you can
trajectory as
find
JJ
me,
Redick.
yeah, well, if you can find me a contract where I'm getting the same as JJ Redick, then I'll put the hours in.
That's a good deal. I'll do my best. Anyone
Thank
listening?
you. Yeah.
Any international teams or maybe in the south of France, somewhere that'd be nice.
Yeah.
So coaching's off the cards then, but
Yeah.
any throughout your rugby career, Matt, is there any like coaches in particular or mentors that you had that really stood out to you and taught you some lessons?
Yep. Yeah. Also, as far as coaching, I did do a week in Suntory in Japan where it was just a spot coaching, but I was on-field coaching. So I'd almost run the B team against the A team, and I feel like you can coach in real time as it's happening, talk them through different lines, and I did enjoy that. So as far as not coaching at all, that spot coaching where you can come in and make a difference, I find that beneficial. But it's that year-on-year coach that I was talking about. As far as mentors, I don't know. I think throughout my career, every coach I had at that time was the right coach for my progression. I'd been pretty lucky. So when I first came in, had Eddie Jones, who was really tough on me, would constantly ask me questions after training, would send me messages about, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing this? And just kept me on my toes. Because at the time, a new kid coming in, there's always positive press around any new player that comes through. They probably overhype it more than anything. So Eddie was really good at keeping me grounded, keeping me at feeling like I didn't really belong at the test level, but made me feel definitely a part of the group, but just felt like I always needed to keep improving to constantly add to the team success on the weekend. So he was great for me. After that, I had John Connolly, who was a very relaxed coach, and he almost just he was almost like, I just want Matt Giteau to be Matt Giteau. And that was a total different dynamic from Eddie, who you never really saw yourself as a single kind of identity. It was more like how your piece would fit into the team success. Whereas John Connolly was just almost about, you just be you be yourself. And I was like, oh, wow, this is refreshing. Like I could colour my hair, I could cut it how I wanted. No, but just basic small stuff. Like with Eddie, I'd always have to cut it off, colour it, keep it plain, simple, not try and stand out. Whereas, not that I was trying to stand out, but my personality, I feel if I'm more showy, like with the haircuts and stuff early on, in my mindset, it would give me more confidence and a bit more swagger, like feeling that I belonged more on the football field. So that was a nice change. Even at the Brumbies, I had a standing coach, Tony Ray, who was a league guy. And what I loved about him was he was just honest and straight. He'd be like, Gitz, you didn't play well because of this reason. I need this out of you this weekend. Whereas there's been coaches that you've not been picked or you're not starting, and they'll say, look, you're doing everything right. You're doing everything right. Just keep going. You'll get your opportunity. And I hate that because I want something to work on. I don't want to just keep doing what I'm doing because it's obviously not enough. It's just, I find that a cop-out, that type of an answer for many coaches. So I loved an honest coach that just said, your defence wasn't good, or we're going with a bigger team this week, just you need to lift or get stronger, something. They gave me something to work on. And Bernard Laporte in France, he was similar like that. He was honest. To even my second last coach, Darren Coleman, that I had in LA, obviously a bit older, I was, and he treated me more like we were on the same page. So it was almost like we're both coaching together. and we'd meet before all the leaders would meet and go through a game plan. I'd listen to his reasoning about why he wanted this certain play. If I really liked it, then we'd agree upon it, and then we'd implement it, and I'd drive it. But it was actually coming from him, so it was almost like you felt a part of a real, almost like a co-coach a little bit, I suppose. It was the way that dynamic was, and I loved that as well. So, yeah, as far as coaches, like I just feel like every stage that I've been at was probably the right coach for me. Even in 2011 when I got dropped by Robbie Deans, I got kicked out of the team, but earlier in the year I'd signed to go to Toulon. And in my mind I'd felt that this South of France team had signed Matt Giteau the Wallaby, but when I turned up, I'd been dropped earlier and I was no longer this Wallaby, so I was almost like Matt Giteau the fraud on this contract. So I felt I had to just really humble myself, work hard, head down, prove that I'm there for the right reasons, learn the language, and I don't know, I just felt like that extended my career massively by getting dropped as well. So I just think throughout my stage in my career, I've been very lucky that each coach kind of gave me a new direction and a new purpose in rugby. And as far as role models, I think my parents, they were there the whole time, supporting me anytime, and my wife as well, brothers, sisters, anytime that you're going through your ups, everyone's with you, but when you're going through your downs, you really understand who's actually there with you. So that's where it's not really role models where I base my career on what they do, but they were always my sounding blocks and people that I could always count on throughout my career.
Yeah, I mean that's timing wise, it sounds great, but also you probably part of it was you making the best of every situation you were in. Like you get dealt the hand of cards, but you've got to make it work with whatever coach. And it's true, right? Like mentors in sports, it's quite easy to associate a coach as maybe a mentor if they're the right fit for you. When you're not in sport and you're out in like the real world and real life, sometimes it can be a lot harder to find that sort of mentor figure and mentor person who comes in and positively influences your life like a coach would. Have you, since your retirement, have you met anyone like that or approached or been approached by anyone who sort of wants to help push you in other ways, or have you gone looking for that at all?
Yep. Yeah. So Drew Mitchell, one of my best mates, he retired when we both left Toulon in 2017. I think he retired, and then I obviously played on. So he went through that transitioning period, and his was quite tough. Like he battled through it. He's doing great now in commercial real estate, selling pubs. So it's an area he knows. But he's been helping me a lot. He's always been a great sounding block to talk to. As far as business goes, Tony Ray, who I spoke about earlier, he was our defence coach, and then he became an interim coach for the Brumbies when Andy Friend got moved on. He moved to London, and he's into raising equity. He's around, that. I think he's just in charge of raising equity. I'm not sure what it's actually for, whether he's involved in construction or what it is, but he's been CEOs of big, in Super League. He's good mates with Richard Branson, whichever Super League team he owned. Tony Ray was the CEO and coaching there. So he knows business really well, and that's someone that I often go to around any similarities between business and sport, where you can add value. Just trying to, because until you actually know one side of something, you don't, you only know what you know. And for rugby, I know rugby. And then when I talk to Tony, I call him Sniffer. So I'll be like, Sniffer, like what are the similarities there? And he would just talk around, accountability. Obviously, he has a leader, knowing each person's roles, making sure that they're capable of fulfilling their roles, being one. And don't give them, if you're a prop, don't ask him to do a chip and chase, in rugby point of view. Obviously, understanding of their roles, the clarity. And then the third one is just trying to get them to buy in. Because if they don't want to buy in, that's probably the hardest thing to drive as a leader. So I'm often going to, and that's just a small example of little chats that we'll have, and I just listen. He'll just talk forever, and I'll just listen. I'll say, I can use pause, and I'll write that down, things that I can kind of, things that I kind of understand, but things that make a lot of sense to me from the world that I've come from. It's not like trying to steal bits that you actually don't understand. It's just because then when you go to talk about it or your questions about it, you can come across a bit fraudulent.
As soon as people prod a bit deeper, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. So it's just like trying to understand, certain things that he'll talk about and how it can relate to what I do, or how I can actually implement some of the things that he's talking about when I'm trying to transition or find certain roles. Because I don't think there's anything that any player that I've spoken to that's transitioned that will ever compare to rugby, or the career that we had, or playing in front of sold out stadiums, that initial feeling when you've won a title, the jubilation that you feel. Like there's nothing that can replace that. So it's not about finding something that can fill that gap, but it's just trying to find purpose again, and something personally that I'm attached to, something that I enjoy, and something that I'll continue to see progression in and continue to grow. Outside of my family point of view, obviously that's my purpose, but then finding something selfishly outside of that, hey, well, look, that's something that I enjoy. I can see that I can start here and I can get to there through these areas, and then that's something that interests me.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there. Any sort of athlete looking to get a second career, it's like if you're trying to replace that feeling of what it's like to play your sport in front of a crowd with your best mates, it's going to be a tough journey, I think, because it's almost impossible to replicate, right? And you just can't. Those high pressure situations with your best friends in the sheds, even on the socials, it's really impossible to replicate. In this sort of second part of your life now, then, Matt, have you realized anything about yourself, any skills that maybe you didn't realize you had before, but you picked up in your career as a professional rugby player? So anything about yourself, any traits that you're like, oh, actually, I'm really grateful that I've got these attributes from my time as a pro athlete. This will now help me in this second part of my life.
Well, I think, again, this is almost like at the very start where you talk about what you're good at. I don't enjoy. I think I could easily point out my flaws before I could my strengths. But I think from rugby, obviously, reliable. I feel, I'm someone, if I commit to something, I'm going to do it, and I'll do it to the best of my ability. And that was almost why I didn't take that other, the job with the prosthetic, surgeon stuff, because it was a field that I wouldn't enjoy. And also it wasn't something that I knew, like I knew deep down I couldn't commit and give 100% to it because I didn't really enjoy it. So if there was something that I feel like commitment, reliability and accountability. I feel I've always been accountable, work ethic through what we've done, and obviously the longevity to be able to play for a while. I feel your work ethic's got to be consistently there, because as soon as you slack there, then you'll start to slack on the field. So I feel like if there's an area or a line of work that I find interesting and I want to rip right into, I know that I'll be accountable and I can be reliable. And through my work ethic, I feel that potentially I could progress through that area quite quickly if I wanted to. It's just obviously finding that area. But again, I mean, I feel like the biggest wanker ever just talking myself about all the
I asked you the question, man.
I know, but then to answer it. But yeah, I think they'd be probably the three traits that I feel, obviously reliable and accountability. They fall under the same umbrella, and work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you why I asked the question, to make you feel less like a wanker. A lot of my friends are still sort of in the sports sort of space. And from my experience, when I was at my rugby team, I often found that a lot of my colleagues they really undersold themselves when they thought that they didn't have a uni degree or anything like that. So that they were really panicking about life after sport because they thought they didn't have any valuable skills that people would want to hire, or they couldn't be successful in another field that didn't require their body. And actually, what I found since, retiring myself and doing my thing now is that actually I find it's the opposite. I think that sportsmen and women, people who have been in that environment, have so many intangible skills that are valuable that are really, really difficult to learn. Like the ones you mentioned, hitting deadlines, ability to take feedback is a fucking huge one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I've worked in some corporate offices now in my time, as you know, when I was at this bank, and etc. And the chat in there is obviously completely different to a changing room in a rugby environment. But it's not even that. The sort of feedback you give to people where you think that's normal and you're actually trying to do what's best for the team by giving honest feedback, that then gets sent up to HR, that comes back. People can't take that normally. People don't take that. And so it takes a lot of adjustments. So the reason why I asked the question is because I think people that are in sports, they need to know that it's not just their body that is of value when they go through this career of not just rugby, but any sports.
Well, that'd be the hardest part for me, is because feedback, and also I'm someone that struggles to hold his tongue. Even with our with the podcast, the back staff and even Prof, to a certain extent, they thought I was coming off quite aggressive, with your straight feedback. But like, I'm saying it because we're all in this together. Like, I feel like and this isn't a personal attack, and it's the way that rugby works, is nothing's ever personal. It's about the betterment of that group and the team and your performance that weekend. So for us now with the podcast, it's about our performance, the next one on Monday. So if there was something in that recording that we did and I didn't feel right, because then I drive back home for 3 hours. So I'm thinking about the product that we've just pushed, and I want the best product that represents us. So then I'll say, look, I thought this was not good. Was there something that I needed to do here? Am I laughing too much into the mic? Should I be away? Or how's it all, just constantly chasing that feedback. Initially, they found it a bit confrontational, like, fucking, what's wrong with Gitz? Like, geez, he's a bit on me. But I wouldn't even think twice about it, because that's the area that I've come from. That's the environment in rugby where it's high performing. So with a high performance unit, you don't have time to think about feelings too much at all. You've just got to say, look, mate, that tackle wasn't good enough, or your pass was off, or where were you? You're supposed to be on my inside. Your feedback is so direct and short that you just move on. It's about getting that performance better. So I think from a corporate sense, my biggest challenge, if I was to get into that, would be obviously holding my tongue being one, but then not being able to hold anyone else accountable. Like, I feel like I'll always do what I say I'm going to do. But if I knew someone else wasn't doing something and I couldn't say anything because then it goes to HR, I'd find that really, really hard.
Yeah, it's not the easiest, man. I'll tell you from experience, it's tough when you go from one to the other within the space of a year. And lots of people do that, and you kind of just, fit in and you learn your lessons. But it's the point is there are many, many skills that men and women have from being part of a sports environment, especially an elite sports environment, that are transferable to other areas of life. I want to get into rugby a bit. You've obviously had this huge career, right? You've obviously had this huge career, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't know about it, because I do, and I watched it all growing up. There are some key moments in your career that I would love to sort of dive into, which I think and I hope would be interesting to even non-rugby listeners. One of them being you mentioned previously your omission from the 2011 Rugby World Cup squad for Australia.
Yeah.
This was. I still remember it. It was all over the news. It was a huge, huge blow. I would love to, if you wouldn't mind, taking us into your kind of mindset at that sort of point. Like, how was it? What was it like dealing with that level of disappointment?
Tough, really tough. I think the hardest part was I got called. So the team went to South Africa to play. I was in the Wallaby squad at the time, but I wasn't in the 23 or 22 that were heading over to play the test. So I stayed back, and then went obviously back home to Canberra, then got a call saying, come up to Sydney to speak with Robbie around selection. So I was like, okay, must be there. So the team came back. They just got off their plane from South Africa, sat down with Robbie in the change room, or not the change room, but in the room that we had at the hotel where all the team meetings and whatever would be that they'd set up. And in the corner, you had assistant trainer getting changed out of his travel clothes back into his normal stuff. The strapping team unboxing their stuff, and Robbie sitting down with me while all this is happening. Said, "Mate, I just want to let you know we don't have room for you in the World Cup. We're going with a 17-13 split, meaning we're choosing 17 forwards, 13 backs for our 30-man squad. You're the first back reserve if anything happens, but we don't have a seat for you." I was like, "Okay, why did you fly me up to tell me that?" I said, "This is embarrassing." I said, "The whole team's here. I'm now going to have to walk past my teammates who have all been selected getting ready for the team photo, and it's like I've been flown up to get embarrassed." And he said, no, like I did it out of respect." I said, "Well, Robbie, with all due respect, if it's out of respect, then you'd ask the assistant coach to get out of the room. You wouldn't be unboxing all the strapping tape there. It'd be just me and you." But he had like people around, so I didn't want to kick off a fuss too much. And also, I didn't want to come off too spoiled. So then as I got out of the room, I just went on Twitter. I don't know why, but I then just tweeted, "Thank you, ball boys. Thank you, linesmen. That's it." And then from there, the team was getting announced the next day, but I think people kind of drew conclusions that I'd been not picked. Then my phone obviously was going off, and I didn't realise that it would kick off such a stir. I went home, went to my brother's place, and got a bottle of vodka. Not the best thing, but he loves his vodka, so it was just I didn't really even have that much to drink, but we were just like chatting and being around family, not talking rugby. Wife was there, mum, dad, brother, sister came over with her husband, Sockeye, at the time. So everyone was around. I think it was definitely before kids. Maybe my eldest brother had his son at that stage, but that was it. So I was a bit flat, but it was more just the embarrassment, really, of walking past the team. And even when I went up to my room to grab my bags, I was with Digby Ioane, and he's like, "Oh, where are you off to?" He said, No. I said, "No, I'm just going to go grab some stuff downstairs." Didn't really want to tell anyone that I'm out, because they had only booked me on a flight the next day, which meant that night I go to team dinner with everyone. They then head off, get their team photo. I just wait in the hotel, and then they're going to fly me out the next day. I said, "Can you at least move it forward?" So that was even a struggle to get that moved forward, the flight. Then I nearly got fined for sending out a tweet because I'm not allowed to say anything until the announcement of the team. So all that just left a real bitter taste in my mouth, and I was really looking forward to then getting over to France. And then hence going back to that time when I got to France and I felt that embarrassment of not being selected for the Wallabies, kind of that same feeling when I'm walking past the boys who've all been picked for the Wallabies and I haven't. That kind of embarrassing feeling is how I felt when I was walking into Toulon for the first time. I was like, "Oh, that's that guy that didn't play in the World Cup," is how I was feeling. So it just made me work harder, and I think it truly extended my career. But at the time, because it's the first time in my career which I really didn't have a great relationship with the coach, and the first time that I hadn't been selected. There'd be times when I'd been out of form for Super Rugby, but I'd kind of proved myself to that national coach the year before, so I got picked on merit and then was able to still perform. But this was probably just one coach that didn't happen, and I feel like I didn't handle it very maturely. I reckon I reacted and kicked off a little bit like a brat internally. So I'm a bit embarrassed of the way I kind of handled that situation, but it was so foreign to me that I can only live and learn from that experience, and which I feel like I did.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. I didn't know all the intricacies about being in the change room and the people being around. I mean, you can understand both sides of the story. Like it's not really news you want to be hearing when you've got people around the change room and you've got all your teammates there. Were you the only one who got flown out?
Yep. I think I was
news?
the only one, because the rest were coming back from South Africa that were selected in the squad. And that was the other thing. Like when they were in South Africa, I sent a message because I remember ringing Jeremy Paul, who got admitted from the 2007 World Cup squad. And he gave me a bit of advice. He said, "Look, kid," he just called me kid because when I came in, I was small. So looked like a 12-year-old. So they called me kid. And he was like, "Kid, just don't be too proud. Reach out to Robbie. Just say you don't mind even holding bags. However you can help the group, you're happy to do that. Just like I feel like my actions throughout that rugby championship, it was Tri-Nations maybe at the time, through that Tri-Nations, I felt like I was there to support the team. But I had never vocalised that maybe I was happy to do that. So anyway, Jeremy Paul just said, text him and let him know that you're willing to do that. I sent the message when they were in South Africa and didn't hear back. And then when we were sitting down, I said, did you get my message? He said, oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't have my phone on. I'm just thinking, like a national coach, you're in South Africa. I don't know, I just felt like that was a cop-out. But at the same time, he didn't see me in his team. I don't think a coach would pick a squad despite one person. He wants to pick a team that he thinks will win a World Cup. So he didn't see my plans to be in that team. He didn't see that there is a benefit to gain from it. So now looking at it now that I'm a lot more mature and I've had more life experiences, I can see his point of view. But at the time, I found it really hard and just embarrassing. I think embarrassing was probably the biggest thing that I felt, because I was in the papers, and then the next day, even walking around this small town, like Canberra's a small place. Everyone knows everyone. So I just felt like I had to carry that embarrassment for a while and just could not wait to get to France, where it's a total new place,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like a rebound then, if we talk about your time in France, and we'll go through some of the rugby stuff fairly quickly. I don't want to...
rip through it. I don't care about it.
Now, your time in Toulon, you said you think it's extended your career, and then that led then into the 2015 World Cup. You won 3 Heineken or European Cups back to back, and played with some of the all-time greats in that team. It was literally like watching an all-stars team in basketball terms. It was cool to watch. And then fast forward to the 2015 World Cup then, and they introduced a new law just to basically get you back on so that you can play in the World Cup. So how was that whole build up for you? How was your time in France, and how did you ever think you were going to play for Australia again after that 2011? Because obviously the laws weren't instated then.
Yeah, so the laws weren't in. So I think if you were playing in Australia, you could play for Australia. As soon as you decide to head overseas for what they thought was the big cash, when my deal at Toulon the first year was way less than what I was getting in Australia. But it was more just the opportunity, and experiencing something culturally totally different was something that appealed to me. Hence, that's why I signed at the start of the year. I thought I'd play in that World Cup. At the time, I was on 91 test caps. So if I played the test matches through the year, I would have easily hit the 100, and then I could go overseas. I played one test against Samoa and then didn't play another one under Robbie, and I'd signed to go over. So I was like, well, that's it, 92 caps. That's good enough, that was fine. But when I got to France, as I touched upon, being embarrassed and my work ethic, head down, re-humbled myself. It was even just like the language around talking with the head coach, Bernard Laporte. He's like, oh, Matt, how old are you? And I was like, 29. He's like, oh, you are a baby. Even just that logic switched my mindset massively. I started to feel young. I started to not feel like I was hanging on, because I'd only signed an 18-month deal at Toulon, and then thought after that I retire, because rugby players back then retire when they're 30. In your 30s, you're kind of old, whereas now it's starting to change a little bit. But even just the mindset around feeling young, compared to when I was in Australia, like at 29, I was done. So going over there, I played 5 years. It was playing with, I think also the calibre of players that I was playing with. You wanted to prove that your country was just as hard to get selected for as their country, if that makes sense. So your 90 caps for England or your 90 caps for South Africa aren't worth any more than my 90 for Australia, because this is how I play. And I'm representing Australia a little bit, is kind of my mindset, trying to prove myself to these guys, which kept the work ethic high. Johnny Wilkinson was great for us as far as keeping us connected, keeping us on track, because in France, you obviously there's a few things you can do outside of rugby, that you can have some rosé, you can easily get distracted. Even the cheeses and the meats and whatever else, you could get away from what your actual role is to be there. So I thought Johnny was great to keep us all aligned and connected.
In what ways did he do that? Just by letting you know that you're there to work, or what?
Well, he's J-Dub, like that was Johnny. So like everyone respected him. He would always turn up on time. In meetings, he'd put his hand up. And you could see how much he was buying into wanting to achieve something and win. and I felt like the players that we got there weren't just superstars, but they were superstars that still had the hunger to want to get better, still had the hunger to try and win titles and, play for the right reasons. Like, there is nothing better at the end of the year when you've won everything there is to win there. And you're just so satisfied, your holidays of 6 weeks, you've done everything. And then, the feeling, so then that next year, like, let's go for that again. And then after we won the second European title, Bernard Laporte said, no one's ever done it 3 in a row. And we're like, well, okay, well, let's now go for that. And that third year was without Johnny. So it was a tougher, it was a tougher one to do. But we, I just think through his work ethic, just how accountable he kept everyone. It just kept us going, kept us moving forward. And I think that's why we had such a great team, but we had this team that bought into the program and bought into trying to win things, not just good players that came together. We came together and we united and we kind of all bought into the fact that we're here to win something,
Was there any apprehension on your side with coming in and playing alongside Johnny Wilkinson? I know you guys both, he's the talisman of England, you're the talisman of Australia, and now you're being put together 10 and 12. Was there what was your thought process going into that?
I wanted to hate him. I really wanted to hate him because he, just the way the media and the press would build him up. And it's not through him. He hates that stuff. Once you start to understand him, he's not about that. But when you're on the other side of the hemisphere, so the southern hemisphere, and you see all these articles about this great Johnny Wilkinson, Sir Johnny Wilkinson, I'm going, look, give it a rest. Like, he's just a rugby player. And then you get over there, and I wanted to hate him, but he's such a great fella. He's so selfless. And he made it really easy for me to fit in, with the team. Because the way Johnny would work, he's very detailed on his game plan, and he'll just stick to those processes. That's what he wants to do. It says that the back right corner, if he's got the ball to kick, will often be open. Then he knows that's what he's going to do. I try and play a little bit more instinctive. So obviously I learn the game plan, know where we're going to put the players and where our team needs to be on the front foot. But I'm often looking for opportunities throughout that. So by playing with Johnny, knowing that he's driving the game plan, I could just sit back and look at certain opportunities. And early on, I would call things like, okay, play me out wide, to Johnny. I'm trying to keep this really simple for people that don't understand rugby, but I would say, yeah, it's on out wide, pass the ball wide. But in his mind, the phase before, he saw that the defence was wide and it wasn't on. But things changed in that time, and so then he goes for the kick. It took 2 or 3 games before he actually could see, or he had the trust that what I was calling was actually on. And then as soon as he kind of just gave a little bit of responsibility away from himself to someone else, I felt like it took a lot of pressure off him, but it also opened our game up massively because now he can just control what's happening where we need to be from a game plan point of view. And I could then control all the other stuff outside of him. So his eye line is straight in front and a little bit in to where the ruck or the halfback may be where he's got to communicate. But then my eyes would be outside that and I'd worry about everything else for him. So I just felt that we kind of halved each other's responsibilities in a way, which made things a lot more enjoyable. And then from that, our friendship grew massively as well. We learnt to obviously trust each other. Johnny's a pretty quiet guy. So once I got his trust, and even now, we've got a great relationship.
I love that. Now I've got one more rugby-related question, and I've got some relatively quick-fire ones to finish on. You've been a part of 2 World Cup finals, which I said in the intro. Now, to me, as a rugby man, that is just like the pinnacle. That is just the coolest thing ever. How do you deal with that kind of pressure and going into those matches? Now, I know they're both very different scenarios. One in 2003, one in 2015, but talk us through that feeling before the game in the change room with the players.
What you failed to mention was I'm the only player in world rugby to lose 2 World Cup finals as well. So it's not.
Why would I include that? Why would I?
No, I know. I just like to, as you say, you keep building me up. I don't like it, so I've got to keep things pretty transparent there. The feeling. So for 2003, it was just normal. The team I came in were winners. They'd won the previous World Cup. They won the British and Irish Lions. your George Gregan, Steve Larkham, legends of the game. We just won every game we went in. Like, we felt that if we play well, we're going to win. It's just how it was. I wasn't even thinking too much about it. We win this game, we win the World Cup. Like, it was simple. Then even after the World Cup, I was shattered, but not devastated, because I was just like, well, you know what? The next World Cup, we'll just win it when we're in this same situation. Next World Cup comes along, we get knocked out in the quarters. The one after 2011, I'm not picked. Now I'm in France. I'm like, shit. That was a really rare opportunity that I didn't really, I undervalued, and I didn't appreciate the magnitude of actually the occasion. So then in 2015, when I got the opportunity to come back and play for the Wallabies, and we made it to the final, I really soaked it up. Like, I loved being a part of it. I knew how hard it was to get there. Even your small things, your captain's run the day before you play the game, your normal water bottles that are World Cup ones, it might be a dark blue colour. For the World Cup, everything's gold. So we've all got the gold water bottles. Everything's just different. The change rooms, the signage, everything, World Cup final. Like, it's a big occasion. For nerves, I think the night before took me a while to get to sleep. You know, you're thinking tomorrow night, shit, I might be a world champion. It's everything I've ever wanted. Didn't happen, but still, the next day, I don't know. With tournament rugby, especially the World Cup, we didn't lose a game. So it's just a momentum thing. You feel like you can just keep performing. We're in a good space. We were playing well. We're up against a really good team, and probably one of the greatest World Cup sides ever, I think, assembled. Everyone keeps talking about them. I'm sick of hearing about them, but they were good. But yeah, it was just like, we're full of confidence. We'd won everything in our pool stages. We'd knocked the host England out of their own World Cup. We topped our pool, which was labelled the pool of death. We won our quarterfinal, which I got my 100th cap in. The semi-final, we won against Argentina. We just, like, everything was tracking well. So we just had to do our job, and I believed we'd win the World Cup. 20 minutes in, I get knocked out. Well, not knocked out. I think I got sparked, because I still remember waking up, running to the change room, trying to do my head assessment test, your knockout concussion test, and it's with a independent doctor, so there's no favoritism. And this doctor looked at the replay, said, no, I'm not even going to test you. I said, you've got to give me the chance to at least pass or fail. If I fail, that's fair enough, but give me the opportunity to have a go at this test. She said, no, I looked at the footage, we're not doing it. And I was furious. So that, while it was great to get there, even hugging my kids afterwards, that was nice, that they got to watch their dad play for Australia again. There are lots of good things to come out of the World Cup, but I would have loved to compete for that full 80, because I felt like it actually wasn't that bad a head knock, but I understand doctors have to do what's right, what they believe is right, and it's a tough position for them. But that was, as far as feelings go, I wasn't overly nervous before the game. It's just process driven. Your game plan down pat by the time you get to the game. So it's all, you try to switch off. I know what I've got to do. I've got my certain notes that I'll put down just as my reminders, whether it's defensively or talking or my attitude for that game. I've got those 3 notes or 4 notes written down. And then it's just a matter of going out there and executing. Once you get to the field and you're on the grass, you're in your boots, it's so much calmer and you're more relaxed. It's waiting. That waiting, maybe the last 30 minutes after you're strapped and you're waiting for your meeting, was the worst part, because you just want to rip in and get out there and compete.
Yeah, I mean, awesome insights, man. I love hearing stuff like that. Now, I've got a few more finishing questions, but one question I do have to ask, which my mates won't let me off the hook if I don't ask it.
Yeah.
Biggest night out of your career, biggest celebration.
Biggest celebration would have been, so after we won the MLR in America, the Giltinis, our owner, booked us a couple of nights stay at Encore in Vegas. So we went there for a couple of days with Dave Dennis. He was my roomie, your good friend.
I was getting some photos from Deno.
So I was there with Giteau. We were roomies. That was pretty big. I think also the first time we did the double back in Toulon. So the night out after we won the top 14 was great. So we had the European comp, which we won, and then our regional comp, the French top 14 as well, which we won. So that was the double. when we got back to Toulon. So Toulon's population 110,000. 70,000 people came out in the streets. So we were up on top. Like there's footage around. If you looked it up, like it was absolutely unbelievable. Like just the way crowds were. We were in these little, like almost like a big truck that we could stand in, and we drive through the centre of town. People banging on the side, throwing us up beers, drinking with the town. Like just understanding what we did was great for us personally. Like winning a title's great, but for them it was that we'd won something for Toulon. You know, like for their village, they had something that they were so proud of to show off to their friends a little bit is how it was. So that was just really cool to be able to go back to the town where rugby means so much to them and celebrate with them, let them hold these trophies and let them buy us drinks because we didn't pay for anything.
Oh, I love that, man. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in some of those celebrations. I've heard some very good stories. And I know you know, on KOKO and some other podcasts, more rugby relevant, you do open up pretty well about, you know, socials and other good, funny rugby stories. So would inquire other people to go check those ones out. If we ever do a follow-up episode, Matt, what's one topic that you never really get asked about that you would like to talk more about?
I'm fairly open book type stuff. I think even when you go to these different events that we do with even the podcast, and we're at corporate events, and they're like, "What do you want? What do you want to talk about? Where do you want to go?" And I'm like, I don't care. I'll go wherever the people want to go. Like I'm pretty open book. If I don't know something, I'm not embarrassed to say, "Look, can you tell me more about that?" Or I'd love to learn more about that. So I think I'd throw it out to if. And this is a huge if because I'm not sure that anyone will want me to come back. But if anyone does want me to come back, just to write into Abnormal, into you, and anything that they'd love to hear more on, I'd be happy to talk on.
Hey, when you've done your first couple of seasons as Australia head coach, we'll get you back on.
Yeah, when you give me that contract, yeah.
And how would you like to be remembered, Matt, from people that have met you and interacted with you?
Yeah, I think just honest. Like I think an honest person, accountable and loyal. I think you know, I've got a very small circle, very small, even my mates and whatnot. So I like to think that the people that I care about, I'm incredibly loyal to them. And the ones that truly know me, they're the ones that you need to ask. So as long as they speak highly about me, that's all I care about.
And the last question is a question that I ask everyone that comes on Abnormal. And if you could give one piece of advice to anyone listening that wanted to do something abnormal in their lives, so something subjectively abnormal, doesn't have to be being a pro rugby player, running a 5K or whatever, what would that piece of advice be?
If you want to do it, write it down. Be accountable, tell someone else. So then you feel like you now have to deliver not only for yourself, because it's easy to pull out sometimes just for yourself, but if someone else is backing you and you've told someone else that you're going to do something, make yourself accountable and then just go out and do it. And then you've now done something that you wanted to do that you're maybe too scared to have a crack at. So I think it's just committing to something. And then once you commit to it, almost vocalize a little bit so that you become accountable and then just do it. I think you just got to start. That's the biggest thing. It's even with training, and I give a bit of advice to different people around, you know, eating healthy or just being healthy. The main thing with being active for people that want to start is just starting. So as soon as you start and get there, naturally you'll do something. But if you stay in bed and go, "Oh no, I'll do it tomorrow," so often for me, every Sunday, I know I've kind of gone off the thing a little bit, but every Sunday I'll write down a list of things that I want to do, whether it's weights Monday, I'm going to run Wednesday, this is the running I'm doing, this is the ergo or the watt bike that I want to do. I write it down on a Sunday when I feel fresh and I feel like I can do, you know, these tough sessions. But then when the day comes, I've written it down so I commit to it. And I feel like that's one way of me keeping myself accountable at the moment. So I just think try and find your way of keeping yourself accountable and go after it.
Matt Giteau, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, man. It has been a pleasure to talk to you, talk some code, get nerdy a bit from my own listening, but also get a bit deeper. So thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.